Good afternoon. That was San Antonio's Assistant Chief Salome holding a press conference today regarding a 34-year-old Edinburg woman who is facing capital murder charges. This in connection with the deaths of her two children.
All right, are you Marlene Vidal?
Just before 5 a.m. on Friday, May 15, 2026, someone walking their dog near a warehouse parking lot on Richland Hills Drive on San Antonio's west side noticed a vehicle on fire. They saw a woman standing close to it. The woman told them she had already called for help. The passerby called 911 anyway. When San Antonio fire crews arrived and put out the fire, they found two children inside that vehicle. A girl and a boy. Both dead. The woman still standing at the scene was their mother. And when officers walked up to her, she did not run. She did not deny anything. She told them who she was. She told them they would be looking for her in connection with what had happened. Her name is Marlene Vidal. She is 34 years old. She is from Edinburg, Texas. And as of May 15, 2026, she is sitting in the Behar County Adult Detention Center facing 2 counts of capital murder of a person under 10 and 1 count of arson. Charges that under Texas law carry either the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. That is not where this story ends. Now here is where it started. Marlene Vidal lived in Edinburg, Texas, a city in the Rio Grande Valley about 250 miles south of San Antonio. By 2026 she was 34 years old, a single mother raising 2 children after separating from their father, who also lives in the Rio Grande Valley. She had family connections in San Antonio and had been temporarily living there in the weeks leading up to May 15th. Her Edinburg neighbors knew her as a woman who was consistently outside with her children. Neighbor Nohemi Jasso told reporters she would regularly see Vidal with the children but had never spoken with them directly. "I'm sad for the children. People are supposed to keep them safe," Jasso said after the arrest. That is the picture her neighborhood had of her. A mother. Always with her children. What was happening behind that picture is what this investigation is still working to answer. Now here is who those children were. Because before this becomes a case about charges and evidence and court dates, it needs to be about them. Aleeza Elena was 7 years old. According to a fundraiser set up by the family after her death, she dreamed of becoming a doctor. The people who knew her described her as someone who believed she was a little angel. She was at the age where children tell you with complete confidence exactly who they are going to be. Aleeza knew. She had already decided. Adrian was 5 years old. He was autistic and nonverbal. His father described him to Sinclair San Antonio as energetic, charming, and fearless despite the challenges he faced. Being nonverbal does not mean a child is not fully known to the people around them. It means the people around them pay closer attention. His father paid that attention. He knew exactly who Adrian was. 2 children. 7 and 5. Both living with their mother in Edinburg. Both in that vehicle on Richland Hills Drive before the sun came up on May 15th. Now here is the part of this case that most coverage has only brushed past. Because the 5 days before May 15th were not ordinary days. And when you line up what happened in order, the questions they raise are the ones this investigation has not yet publicly answered. Sunday, May 10th. A neighbor in Edinburg told Channel 5 News that Vidal showed up at her front door that day with Aleeza and Adrian, asking for sugar and milk. The neighbor saw the children. She spoke with them. That was the last time anyone in that neighborhood saw that family together. Monday, May 11th. Mother's Day. A neighbor captured video of Edinburg police arriving at Vidal's home. While Vidal was outside speaking with the officer, a delivery of Mother's Day flowers arrived at the door. The officer left a few minutes later. Vidal went back inside. Edinburg police have not publicly stated what that visit was about. SAPD has not addressed it either. That question is officially open on the record. But a police visit to Marlene Vidal's home 4 days before her children were found dead in a burning vehicle is not a detail that belongs in the background of this story. It is one of the most significant unresolved threads in this entire case. Thursday, May 14th. The children's father told Sinclair San Antonio that Vidal drove from Edinburg to San Antonio that night, a 250-mile trip, with Aleeza and Adrian in the vehicle. The father was not with them. He was in the Rio Grande Valley. He did not know what was about to happen. Friday, May 15th. Between 5 and 6 a.m. A burning vehicle in a warehouse parking lot. A woman standing close to it who told the first person who stopped that she had already made the call. And 2 children inside who never made it out. Now here is what San Antonio police found when they got to that scene. What the evidence showed. What Marlene Vidal said when they took her in for questioning. And what the charges filed against her that same day mean for what comes next. That is where we are going. Stay with us. San Antonio Police Department Assistant Chief Jesus Salami Jr. stood in front of cameras on the morning of May 15, 2026 and held two separate press conferences. That alone tells you something about how fast this investigation moved and how much the picture was changing in real time. The first press conference came just after 7 a.m. At that point, Salami told reporters that first responders had initially found what appeared to be 3 young children inside the vehicle. That number went out. News outlets picked it up. And then, at the second press conference held just before 10 a.m., Salami corrected it. 2 children. Not 3. Both deceased. Both believed to be ages 5 and 7, pending formal identification from the Bexar County Medical Examiner's office. That correction happened on camera, in front of journalists, within the same morning. It tells you that investigators were processing that scene rapidly and were careful enough to correct the public record before allowing a wrong number to stand. It also tells you that in the early hours of that investigation, even the most basic facts were still being confirmed. By the time Salami stood in front of cameras for the second time, investigators already had 3 separate streams of evidence pointing in one direction. The first stream was physical evidence collected at the scene on Richland Hills Drive. The second was surveillance video from the area that captured what happened at that location. The third was the most direct of all, statements made by Marlene Vidal herself, first at the scene and then during questioning at the station downtown. Salami confirmed all 3 publicly. At this stage of the investigation, we have statements made by the suspect along with surveillance video and evidence from the scene that indicate she was solely responsible for the death of these 2 children. 3 separate streams. All pointing to one person. All confirmed within hours of the vehicle being discovered. Now here is the detail that separates this case from most of what you will see covered. When officers first arrived at that parking lot on Richland Hills Drive, Marlene Vidal was still there. She had not left. And when officers approached her, she identified herself as the children's mother and acknowledged that officers would be looking for her in connection with the deaths. She said that at the scene. Before any formal questioning. Before she was taken downtown. She told officers who she was and she told them she understood why they were there. That acknowledgement, unprompted at the location in the early morning hours before the city was fully awake, became part of the evidence chain that led to charges being filed the same day the children were found. Most cases take days or weeks to reach the charging stage. This one moved within hours. The evidence was that direct. Vidal was taken to the station for questioning. After that questioning concluded, the charges were filed. She was booked into the Bexar County Adult Detention Center on 2 counts of capital murder of a person under 10 and 1 count of arson. During her magistrate hearing on Friday evening, she requested a court-appointed attorney. She has not entered a plea on the public record. Now let us be precise about what those charges mean under Texas law. Capital murder of a person under 10 is not a general murder charge. It is a specific designation that applies when the victim is a child below the age of 10. Under Texas law, a conviction on a capital murder charge carries either the death penalty or life in prison without the possibility of parole. There is no middle ground. No reduced sentence. No possibility of release. If the Bexar County District Attorney pursues this to conviction, Marlene Vidal will either face execution or spend every remaining year of her life in prison. The Bexar County District Attorney's Office has not yet publicly stated whether they intend to seek the death penalty. That decision has not been made public as of the time this was reported. Bond was set at $2.1 million, $1 million for each capital murder charge and $100,000 for the arson charge. For most people, $2.1 million bond is not something that gets posted. But the conditions attached to that bond if she did make bail are worth noting because they reveal how seriously the court is treating the mental health dimension of this case even before it has been formally established by investigators. If Vidal makes bail, she will be placed under full house arrest with GPS monitoring, required to undergo a mental health evaluation, and prohibited from any contact with anyone under 18. A mandatory mental health evaluation built directly into the bond conditions. That is not standard language. That is a court responding to what investigators have already flagged about this case. Which brings us to the mental health question. Because this is the part of this case that is simultaneously the most important and the least answered. When Salami addressed the question of motive at his press conference, he was careful about what he confirmed and what he did not. His exact words, "We don't yet have a clear motive, however, there are indications that mental health issues may have played a role. That is something investigators are working hard to better understand." He did not confirm a diagnosis. He did not confirm that Vidal had been receiving treatment. He did not confirm whether any mental health system had been in contact with her before May 15th. What he confirmed is that investigators had seen enough, in her statements, in the evidence, in the surveillance footage, and in whatever background they were able to pull together in those first hours, to flag mental health as a possibility worth formally investigating. That is a specific and deliberate statement from a senior law enforcement official. It is not speculation. It is an acknowledgement that the why behind this case is not yet clear, and that the path to understanding it runs through a mental health assessment that the investigation is actively pursuing. Now here is where this connects to something that has not been answered publicly and that this channel is naming directly as an open question on the record. On Mother's Day, May 11, 2026, 4 days before Aleeza and Adrian were found in that vehicle, Edinburgh police visited Marlene Vidal's home. A neighbor captured it on video. While Vidal was outside speaking with the officer, a delivery of Mother's Day flowers arrived at her door. The officer left a few minutes later. Vidal went back inside. Nobody has explained that visit. Not Edinburgh police. Not SAPD. Not any official statement from any agency involved in this investigation. What was the nature of that visit? Was it a welfare check? Was it a response to a call from someone who knew Vidal? Was it connected to the mental health indicators that investigators later flagged? All of those questions are officially unanswered. What makes that visit significant is not just that it happened. It is that it happened 4 days before 2 children were found dead in a burning vehicle. If that visit was connected in any way to a mental health concern, to a call from a neighbor or family member, to any system that had flagged something about Vidal's situation, then the question of what happened after that officer left her doorstep is one that this investigation will have to answer. A neighbor who asked not to be identified told Sinclair San Antonio that Vidal had been showing increasingly unusual behavior in the weeks before the children were found. She had shaved all of her hair and told the neighbor it was because she had breast cancer and had cut it herself. On a separate occasion, Vidal suddenly ran toward the neighbor's vehicle as she pulled into her driveway and began asking if her husband was home, claiming she kept hearing gunshots from New Year's celebrations and wanted to talk to him about it. Days later, Vidal approached the same neighbor again, this time holding both children by the hand, and told her that if she heard screaming coming from the house it was because her 5-year-old son was autistic and screamed often. The neighbor also noted that officers had been seen at the home numerous times before, leading neighbors to believe whatever was happening was already being handled. The local Office of Child Protective Services confirmed it is now investigating this case since the crime occurred in Bihar County. That confirmation is important for what it tells us and for what it does not tell us. CPS is involved now. Whether CPS was involved before May 15th, whether this family had any prior contact with Child Protective Services, any prior welfare assessment, any documented concern, has not been confirmed on the public record. That distinction matters enormously for how this case gets prosecuted and how it gets understood by the community. This channel has reported on cases throughout 2026 where the question of prior system contact became central to understanding how a tragedy was allowed to reach the point it did. In every one of those cases, the answer to that question changed how the public and investigators understood the full picture. This case is no different. The Edinburgh police visit on Mother's Day. The mental health indicators flagged by SAPD. The CPS investigation now underway. These are not separate details. They are threads in the same question. What did any system know about Marlene Vidal before the morning of May 15th? And what happened to that information? Those questions do not yet have answers. And that is exactly why this case is not finished. What the investigation has confirmed is this. The cause of death for both children is pending the Bihar County Medical Examiner. That finding has not been made public. The cause and origin of the fire is pending the arson investigation being conducted separately from the homicide case. That finding has not been made public either. The full motive remains officially open. Mental health has been flagged as a possible factor but has not been formally established. And the question of what the Edinburgh police visit on Mother's Day was about has not been addressed by any law enforcement agency. Salami closed his press conference with something that needs to be stated plainly because it is the most honest thing said publicly about this case so far. Everyone's going to want to know why something like this happened. And unfortunately, the why is sometimes the hardest question to answer. What I commit to you now is that we're going to continue working to find the truth, seek justice for those children, and support everyone affected by this tragedy. That is not a deflection. That is a senior law enforcement official standing in front of cameras and telling the public exactly where this investigation is and what it is committed to. The who is established. The what is established. The why is where the work is now focused. And in cases where mental health is part of that picture, The why rarely comes down to a single moment. It builds across time. Sometimes that build is visible to the systems around a person. Sometimes it is not. Whether it was visible here, whether any system had enough information to intervene before May 15th, is the question that will define this case when it reaches a courtroom. If you are watching this and you want to be there when those answers become public, when the medical examiner releases findings, when the arson report comes out, when the motive is formally established, when this case gets a court date, subscribe now and turn on your notifications. By Saturday morning, May 16, 2026, the warehouse parking lot on Richland Hills Drive looked nothing like it had 24 hours earlier. Community members had transformed the area near the crime scene into a memorial. Stuffed animals, bouquets of flowers, candles, and handwritten notes lined the roadside as neighbors and strangers stopped to pay their respects. People who had never met Aleeza or Adrian came and left something anyway. Because when a community hears that 2 children were found in a burning vehicle before sunrise, there is no adequate response. So people go to the place. They leave something. And they try to make sense of something that does not make sense. Those 2 children deserved every year that was ahead of them. Their father spoke exclusively to Sinclair San Antonio after the arrest. He is in the Rio Grande Valley. He no longer lived with Vidal. He confirmed that Vidal drove from Edinburg to San Antonio on Thursday night with both children. He was not with them. He did not know what was coming. His name has not been confirmed by any verified outlet, and we are not going beyond what the record shows. What the record shows is a man who lost both of his children in one night and is now living inside something no parent should ever have to face. The children's extended family launched a fundraiser to cover the cost of their funeral and burial. That fundraiser is the only public-facing action the extended family has taken since the arrest. It is also where the descriptions of both children that the world now knows, Aleeza's dream of becoming a doctor, Adrian's fearlessness, first reached the public record. The family is raising money to bury a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. That is where things stand right now for the people who loved them most. Now here is what this case still needs to answer before it reaches a courtroom. The Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office has not yet released the cause of death for either child. That finding is pending. It is one of the most significant pieces of the forensic picture in this case, and it has not been made public. The arson investigation into the cause and origin of the fire is being handled separately, and that finding is also still pending. 2 separate forensic tracks. Both open. Both central to how this case gets built for trial. The local Office of Child Protective Services confirmed it is investigating this case since the crime occurred in Bexar County. What that investigation produces, whether there was prior contact with this family, whether there were any documented concerns about the children's welfare before May 15th, will shape how the prosecution frames this case and how the public ultimately understands what led to that parking lot on Richland Hills Drive. The Bexar County District Attorney's Office has not yet announced whether they intend to seek the death penalty. Under Texas law, both options remain open: execution or life in prison without parole. That decision will come as the forensic picture becomes clearer and as the case moves toward a formal court date. No trial date has been set. No plea has been entered. Aleeza wanted to be a doctor. Adrian was fearless at 5 years old. Their father is in the Rio Grande Valley carrying what he now knows. Their family is raising money to bury them. And the case against Marlene Vidal is just beginning. When the medical examiner releases findings, we will cover it. When the arson report comes out, we will cover it. When the DA announces their sentencing decision, we will cover it. When this case reaches a courtroom, we will be there. Verified. Sourced. Every open question tracked until it has an answer. Subscribe and turn on your notifications. This case is in its early stages, and every update changes the shape of what comes next. You do not want to find out about the next development from somewhere else. Be here when it drops. We have covered the Shreveport shooting, the Indianapolis prom party shooting, and now the case of Aleeza and Adrian. Every case on this channel is followed all the way through, from the first confirmed detail to wherever accountability finally lands. That is the standard here. And we are not done. More cases are coming. Cases that have not been reported properly anywhere else. If that matters to you, this is where you need to be. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. And stay with us, because the next case is already being researched. And you will not want to miss it.